Hello and welcome to FinSights, interesting conversations with smart people. This series is brought to you by FinClear, the Australian financial services technology company. If you'd like to learn more from thought leaders in technology and finance, head to finclear.com.au.
Good afternoon to our viewers. Thanks for joining us today as we talk about technology in the advice game. Our guest is Tony Catt, Director of Catapult Wealth. Good afternoon, Tony. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you on. I'll give you a quick bio, bit of background about Tony. Tony's worked in the finance industry for more than 2 decades with a background in accounting, research, stockbroking, and financial planning. He's also got significant experience in lecturing and seminars, providing help to regional skills training and regional shareholder association and regional TAFE, and also the ASX investor hours, which he's been doing for over a decade. So Tony, let's get into it. Catapult Wealth. Talk to us about Catapult Wealth. When you started, what was your vision for the business, and how did you, because it's quite a competitive space, how did you feel your approach was going to be different from a value and a service proposition?
Yeah, thanks. Look, it's actually interesting because now we were just about to turn 10 years old next week. So it is a really relevant question, the 10-year look back with the setup of Catapult Wealth. And growing up inside the stockbroking community, I grew up in an environment where it was commission driven. It was, very transactionally driven. And you could feel the tide turning probably in the 2000s, where there was this sentiment around fee for service, client-centric advice, fixed fee type arrangements were starting to come into discussions. And therefore, when we set Catapult Wealth up in 2011, was really around the vision of having a very strong client-centric fixed fee, driven, even on the brokerage side. We wanted to fix brokerage for share transactions. We wanted to take no commissions on insurance products. We wanted to have an annually recurring fee so that you could, say to the client, yep, it's been great having you as a client for the last 12 months. Here's your new engagement letter and let's do it again. And if they said no, they said no. It was a very professional, upfront, transparent relationship. And I really think that those values and that vision stood true right through to now. We've seen the Royal Commission and all the things to come out in that. And now the challenge, I suppose, for us is what does the next 10 years look like? So we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a few questions on the next 10 years, looking ahead based on what we're seeing. But Tony, looking a bit at technology, was that a big consideration for you in the beginning? I mean, you've come to market 10 years ago with quite a disruptive model in terms of fee for service rather than commission and that, which is great. I feel that was also kind of the time when technology was making some pretty significant steps forward. How much did you put into that in terms of planning when you got there? How important was that to you at the start?
Yeah, look, I think that the thing that I learned from the first 15 to 20 years of my career was, and I didn't want to repeat the same mistakes, is have a clear view on the technology and don't have, I guess for want of a better word, have tentacles in your business. So, we have a habit of, in businesses of patching over things all the time, trying to push software into fix problems all the time and thinking that that's going to do the job. We had a very clear picture that we were going to use the fewest amount of software systems to get the job done. That was our mantra. And if that meant we had 20, if that meant we had 50, whatever the fewest meant, we were going to go with. And I was big on trying, with that in mind, therefore Xplan, for example, ended up becoming, if we're going to use it, we're going to use it properly sort of attitude. And I think using Xplan also as an example, a lot of people, it was like it's a Lamborghini that most people drive like an outdated Commodore. And so if you're going to use the technology, use it properly, inch wide, mile deep mentality with the technology. And also our view was getting to bed, for want of a better phrase, with the technology partners that we think can grow with us.
Mm.
So we want to make sure they had a vision of where we were trying to go, and could those people come with us on that journey, even if their technology wasn't there yet.
Right, okay. Because, I mean, it's interesting. It takes a lot of discipline to take an approach like that, because you do tend to get caught up in all the amazing things that all the various different platforms do, right? And you're right, there aren't many that do everything really well. So I suppose it's really about picking the main things that you need and really focusing on those, and trying to not get caught up in the rest of the noise. Because if you do meet with a lot of vendors and look at so many demos and that, you could end up with a myriad of systems, and then integration becomes quite a significant challenge.
Yeah, and I think the point that we came to was that people often try and use technology to mask, I'll call it, poor performance or poor behaviour that's from humans. And so a lot of software, if you don't get the change management right on the processes and systems just with human behaviour in the first place, the technology is not going to fix it. So what we did is we developed systems and processes that, you know, that our teams could do, and then we tried to supplement that with technology, but not technology is going to fix the problem mentality.
Right.
Because, you know, human behaviour is hard to change. It takes a lot of time and effort and energy, and just throwing a new software system in is just another thing. And people don't use it. And while I'm on that front, so we were very clear around change management. We had clear change management procedures in place every time we introduced a new technology. But with that being said, we did look at some technologies that didn't work as well, and we introduced them, and we found that they didn't suit our needs. And, we have a very clear philosophy that we fail fast. If you're going to get things wrong, and we got decisions wrong on the technology front, we'll get rid of it. Let's not sit around and I could use a great example of where we got into bed with one self-managed super fund technology platform, and we got promised a lot. It was horrific, and then we lasted about 9 months, and I said, the team put in a lot of hard work migrating everyone onto it, and we said, nah, doesn't work, get out.
Wow.
And that was a big decision at the time, but now we've been on the new system and very happy for the last 8 years. Looking back, it was a no-brainer.
So that was actually a good segue into my next question. Has the approach worked? What have you learned along the way? Are you seeing the benefits now of the way that you sort of sourced the tech, put in the tech, discarded it quickly if it didn't work? How are you finding now if you look back?
Yeah, I've got mixed. I have that question. I've got mixed emotions around that. I think there is definitely some things we did really well, and I think that where we made mistakes, as I said, is we tried to band-aid things, or we got into business partnerships with the wrong technology groups, or got promised a lot and delivered very little. So they promised that they could fix a lot of problems, I guess I hate the word potential. Everything's got potential. It's one of the worst used words in technology. Or it's in progress or something like that. So the short answer is we made mistakes, yes. What we did, though, when we were looking at technologies of what went well for us, is we looked for the behavior, like the thread. So what were we using? Microsoft, calendars, for example. We use Microsoft Office. We use Microsoft 365. Okay, then we were looking around at different platforms to manage internal communication and things like that. So the natural extension was, well, let's look at Microsoft Teams as an example of what we could use for our internal communication and notifications and so on. So, and because that technology could sing, use the word, to our calendars and our emails and all those sort of things, we found those things that can integrate together worked really, really well. Where we ran into technology that didn't want to talk to other technology, for want of a better word, was very protectionist, that was a nightmare. And in the end, anything that had an open API type system, or philosophy at least, was so much better to deal with and will still be very good to deal with. But some systems were very protective of their IT or their software, and they didn't want to talk to other systems. And I went, you know what, we can't do that. Not particularly when you're running a firm where we've got self-managed super fund business, accounting business, wealth management business. We've got various disciplines in our business that operate a lot of different systems, and they need to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. We found that as well. We've had significant uptake on the API side because it is just such a vital requirement to running a good tech platform or tech stack today. Just being able to communicate, being able to integrate. It's interesting the approach you took with going with the big side of town, the big vendors, and really leveraging them to their fullest extent, rather than, as I said, looking at a lot of different providers. I suppose the concern there for a lot of firms like yourself is, have I got too much dependence on one vendor? Is it too much risk there? But then again, if it's a firm like Microsoft or Iris, you take a level of comfort from the redundancy and the backup and all the rest of processes that they've got.
Yeah, and you're sort of backing them in on their R&D as well. You're backing them in on their future and their ability to go spend money and keep getting better, so that they're not going to get left behind on any new, what the next 5 years looks like. So probably the only other thing I just wanted to mention is that one of the other, I think, mistakes, and I would argue even now financial planning firms particularly are in danger of doing this, is they're doing what I call looking at their problems and choosing the technology from I'll use the phrase, a bottom-up approach. So they're choosing technologies from, well, what can help our compliance, or what can help our processes or systems. And I think that then when you layer up technology from the bottom up, and you end up, and then the client is the last bit of that process, the client goes, hang on a minute, this is what we're getting at the end of this chain is a nightmare. And so we have really clearly adopted a different approach and said, what is the best system for clients, being client-centric? What is the best software that can interact with them? Client portals, client documentation, client information. What is the best client experience? And work our way back down. And the last thing, we want to be compliant and yes, do all the right things. But what does that look like working backwards rather than trying to solve the problem up? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's actually, it's good to hear because, and if you look at a lot of successful firms that have had, significant client uptake, yes, there's relationship, there's a lot of things to it, but building a really interactive, intuitive client-facing system and thinking about the client and going back from there, even on a global basis, all the US companies, the ones that are really succeeding are the ones that are focusing on the end client and building back from there. So that makes perfect sense.
And I think that some of the systems you'll come up with may be the same, but I'll guarantee you there'll be a lot that are different.
Yeah.
And sadly, and I will say this hand on heart, a lot of licensees with all the Royal Commission issues are being forced to be compliant under certain things. And that's, I think, forcing some firms and some advisors into corners with technology that aren't necessarily very client-friendly or client-centric.
Yeah, and it's difficult to get out of that corner.
Yeah.
Well, you seem to have the right approach, certainly historically from a technology perspective, and I think looking at the way you're looking at it going forward, open architecture, integration, really leveraging sort of the best of breed, hate that word, but the leaders out there and partnering up with them. So then if we look at the let's call it the digital and the DIY shift that we've seen in the last, since the start of COVID, really. So we're seeing obviously one is a lot of advisors leave the industry, particularly the last 12 months, down with some of the numbers. And then also a lot of investors now doing it themselves, crowdsourcing research, well, not so much research, advice, going to forums like Reddit and YouTube to get, investment advice. How do you deal with that? How do you see that playing out if you look ahead at the next 10 years and that dynamic of targeting the younger investor versus, the older one? Is it that people get to a stage in their lives that they go, oh, I need financial advice and planning now, I need to think about my insurance and all that? Or how do you tackle that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll probably tackle it in two different ways. Firstly, we are, and I think it was actually even maybe in the financial press today, there is a massive amount of that baby boomer wealth is going to be generationally change in the next 10 years, and we're already starting to see some of it to the next gen of the 40 and 50-year-olds coming through, it is a massive amount of money that's transferring. And ultimately, with that in mind, I would argue we've gone back to our values about how we are approaching that generation. And our values are pretty simple and clear. We talk about education. We talk about making sure people understand where their money is, transparency. We talk about, I'm a bit of an old school person in terms of just goal setting, making money slowly, just let's not try and chase shiny things. Let's just, probably how your parents made their wealth is probably a good start and probably a good thing to follow. So we've tried not to get involved too much in the Reddits and, not saying, hey, that's not who we are, and we're not going to pretend to be something we're not, because that's exhausting. We're going to go back to who we are, what we're good at, and what are our fundamental values of how we look after money and how we look after people. And that's how we've approached the next gen. And an example of that is that we've just, in Adelaide here, just launched, I've just been doing a 4-week course on ASX education, and said it was free. And I did it online and in person, and we have 20 people turn up on a Monday night, and they're all between probably 25 and 35 years of age. And they just want to learn about the stock exchange. And then we've got 40 people online that are watching it at the same time. So, I think that's what we stood for. That's what we're about. And yes, that will resonate with, we hope that will resonate with some people. And I know it won't resonate with a bunch of others, but that's okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of looking out for a quick buck.
Yeah.
They see that others have made it and they think it's easy.
Yeah, and I guess I'm old enough to remember 1999, 2000 at the moment, and I will say, just in the short term, a lot of the behaviours I'm seeing at the moment remind me of 1999, 2000, and and as I said, but philosophically, forgetting the tech stuff and the way, I think we still have to be very mindful, though, how people want to consume information and how they want to be educated or listen or get advice and things like that. So that's where technology still plays a major role in how we're getting that to them. And therefore, that's why in 20 years ago, I would have just done a face-to-face seminar, but now we're doing it via, online video recording, or, we're doing a podcast educating the next gen as well, which we've got, I think, 700 subscribers in the first 4 months, just on basic principles of investing. And to me, it's no different to Barefoot Investor selling 2 million copies of his book. It shows that there's demand for that there's appetite for that education.
Yep, absolutely. And the principles are generally the same, right? As you said, So then, Tony, looking at, let's talk about Robo for a bit. Also something that came on the scene, around 2010, maybe a few years after that. It's seen some decent uptake. Where do you see that fitting in terms of, you've got the Robo digital scale model portfolio, put people into that, off they go. A lot of it obviously has driven the growth in ETFs. But then there's also a technology aspect to it, which would help more traditional businesses that aren't using technology as much potentially leverage that and use that technology to scale and run more model portfolios, manage discretionary accounts. How do you see that playing out in the future, and any plans or any impact that you believe that would have on Catapult Wealth?
Yeah, look, I must admit, probably 10 years ago, I was in public probably saying that ETFs were going to, I could see the growth and the explosion of ETFs. I feel the same way now about MDAs and SMAs. I can see the explosion in growth of that side of things for the next 10 years, the same way I felt 10 years ago about ETFs. And ETFs are still on a growth curve as well. So, yeah, they are absolutely imperative to trying to manage a financial planning business where we've lost between probably 10,000 financial planners by the end of this year. And if they all looked after, a couple of 100 clients each, there's a lot of non-advised people out there, and therefore it's putting pressure on financial planners to look after more people with same amount of time, but things like that. And it's therefore, you need to be more efficient. You need to learn to do things in a different way. And I think I agree with you. I think SMAs and MDAs are a big part of that. So I will also say that I think the future of our industry, financial planners are not going to be replaced with Robo. That's just not going to happen. And to be honest, I don't think paraplanning is going to be replaced with Robo, nor is an administration team going to be replaced. But what I do firmly believe is that if paraplanners and financial advisors are not digitally orientated, in a sense that they know how to put together an SOA using AI, or don't know how the whole tech stack can fit together and efficiently move data from A to B, then they're going to be left going out the back door. So, it's certainly what I call the financial planner of tomorrow is a financial planner plus digital.
Yes.
If that makes any sense.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's how certainly I see it as well. Initially everyone had this vision of these robots coming. It has mental image of these robots coming in and taking over everyone's jobs, and AI and machine learning and all that. But I think it is really, it's getting that blend right, and how could you leverage that technology? And you're right. I think that's where a lot of the efficiencies around, or a lot of the focus then is on implementing technology to be able to run an efficient portfolio management system, rebalance, reweighted, and go from there. So I think you're right. I think that certainly the MDA space, SMA space is certainly one to watch in the future.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also got the efficiencies also have to come on the back end in terms of compliance and file noting and getting, I can fast see a day where we might be in a meeting for 2 hours and we can then record that whole conversation, and some artificial intelligence will be able to put that conversation into a framework that's compliant, because you've had conversations around risk profile. It will start to maybe identify keywords, things like that. I can see that day coming. It may not be there yet, and that will be crucial to our industry to keep the cost of advice down to a suitable level to make sure a lot of Australians can get financial advice.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of technology embedded into a truly digital experience, yes, there is still a relationship, but make it more digital. I think you'll also see uptake at an earlier age as well. From a demographic perspective.
And I think that even now what COVID has done, I mean, my view of Robo and AI and technology in our industry, COVID is just, we've ended up where we would have ended up maybe in 10 years' time, but we've ended up there in 1 year because COVID has forced us there, which is a great thing in my view. But it's also sped up the client's interaction with it. And I think, so certainly my older client base has been much more accepting of technology than they would have been without COVID. And that's helped speed up all our plans around what sort of technology we use for the client part of it as well. Yeah,
that's very interesting. That's an interesting. I like the way you said that. It's essentially fast forwarded what would have probably taken 10 years of the way we were doing it. It's really condensed it into a year.
Yeah, 100%.
Quite amazing. Tony, that's been great talking to you. Thank you very much for your time. Really been very interesting conversation, and we wish you much success as you continue to grow your business for the next 10 years and beyond.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for being on, and thank you to our viewers. Bye for now.